At this time, it's my pleasure to present to you our first speaker, the great Kahan Yochanan Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. Please be seated. As you can see, I'm still alive. Rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Well, after all, I am Yisrayl Hawkins. Knowing what the name Yisrayl Hawkins means, and knowing what the man Yisrayl Hawkins stands for and what he teaches, and knowing that we're all striving to be just like him, and knowing that it means to rule as Yahweh rules, and now that I've asked you to all please be seated, I'm going to ask, will the real Yisrayl Hawkins please stand up? Praise Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. Please be seated again. The title for this sermon here is The Sabbath Menu. And I'm going to start with a definition of the word menu, because throughout the Holy Scriptures, spiritual food is likened to physical food, both being absolutely necessary to sustain life. And I think it was the Random House Dictionary defined it as a list of dishes to be served or available for a meal. And it also says for consumption, a particular variety or preparation of food. Now, if you'll turn over to Genesis 2, verse 9, we can see this right away, or almost right at the beginning of the book of Yahweh. Genesis 2, verse 9, where Yahweh says, "And out of the ground Yahweh made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and desirable for food. The tree of life was in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of righteousness and evil was in the midst also." And skipping down to 16, "And Yahweh commanded the man, saying, Of every tree in the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of righteousness and evil you must not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you will surely die." There is possibility. Obviously, there's a possibility of poisoning food. There's a possibility of poisoning physical food, and there's a possibility of poisoning spiritual food. This is what this is referring to. Any mixture added to the law is a poisoning of that law, and it can actually bring about the death of a great many people. This tree, the teachings of righteousness is pictured as a tree, because a tree, obviously, many trees give off fruit that you can actually eat. Apple trees, orange trees, all kinds of trees. And these are pictured as trees. And this selection of meals available, we can see in Deuteronomy 30, verse 15, where he says, "See, I have set before you this day," almost as though he's setting before a plate of food, "I have set before you this day life and righteousness and death and destruction." One hand we have the life and the righteousness. Yes, waiter, I'll take the death and destruction, please. Does anyone really do that? Does anyone really know what they're asking for when they take these teachings that do lead to death and destruction? Of course not. They don't. They're deceived. "And I call heaven and earth as witnesses," in verse 19, "against you this day that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses, because you are free agents to make your own choice between righteousness and evil. Therefore choose life, so both you and your children may live." And again, throughout the Scriptures, the Scriptures do liken physical food to spiritual food. One of the obvious ones here, we just read it, "Out of the ground Yahweh made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and desirable for food. And Yahweh commanded the man, saying, Of every tree in the garden you may freely eat," in verse 16. Now I want to emphasize that the mouth is a two-way street. We all have a mouth and we all have a tongue. And food goes in and food comes out. The food that goes in is to feed your body. It's the physical food, but the food that comes out of it can affect a great many people. And this is made plain when in Matthew 4:4. If you'll turn to Matthew 4:4, because Yeshua, there's a couple of things that Yeshua said that apply directly to this. Matthew 4:4. I probably tend to go too fast on these things. Don't give enough time to turn to the scripture pages. But Matthew 4:4. But he answered and said, "It is written, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of a certain mouth." So he lives out of every word that proceeds out of a certain mouth, the mouth of Yahweh, or the spokesman of Yahweh. Again, emphasizing that man does not live by bread, cheeseburgers, fried chicken, anything that you'd put into your mouth. Man does not live on these things alone, but it's absolutely necessary to sustain life that man has the every word of Yahweh. If you'll turn to Matthew 15, verse 17. Again, Yeshua just making this clear that in verse 15, 17, he says, "Do you not yet understand that whatever enters in at the mouth goes into the stomach and then is cast out in elimination? But those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and they defile the man." Truth of the matter is, they defile all of mankind, because we can see what the teachings of just a few can do to the entire world. It's not so much, you can defile yourself, of course, if you eat a pork chop, and he's not really referring to necessarily everything that goes into your mouth, but it's not so much what goes into your mouth that defiles you, but it's so much more what comes out of your mouth that defiles you. And especially if you're in some kind of position to teach or are trying to teach others, because this becomes food for others. For out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornication, thefts, false witnesses, blasphemies, the breaking of Yahweh's law. Out of the heart the teachings of these things proceed. These are the things which defile a man, in verse 20. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man. This is what the scribes and Pharisees were complaining about the apostles doing, eating with unwashed hands, that brought about this bit of wisdom from Yeshua. Now, when you turn over to Yachanan 6:48, Yachanan 6:48. Yachanan 6:48. There's a warning here in this scripture that says that it's an offensive message. And in fact, when many of Yeshua's disciples heard it, they actually left him. I don't know what they said when they left. I don't know if they uttered the words, "I don't have to go through Yeshua, I'm going to go straight to Yahweh." Do you suppose many of them said that? Because we have people in these last days who are leaving pastor as he's teaching this message here, and they're saying that I don't have to go through Yisrayl Hawkins, I can go straight to Yeshua. Now, I can guarantee you, when you're sent out into the universe, there's going to be some bozo who's going to stomp off in a huff, muttering under his breath, or maybe over his breath, "I don't have to go through you, I'm going to go straight to Yisrayl Hawkins." It's going to occur. I'm prophesying now, and I don't know if that makes me a prophet, but I'm going to prophesy that that's going to occur. If I had $1 million, I'd put it up and bet it, but I can just hear the words now. I don't know how long it'll be, but someone's going to say it. Okay, Yachanan 6:48. Yeshua says, "I am that bread of life. Your fathers ate manna in the wilderness, but are now dead." They're now dead. "This is that bread coming out of Yahweh, in order that man might eat of it and might not die. I am the living bread out of Yahweh, in which came down. If any man eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I give for the life of the world." And if you skip down to verse 60, he says, "Because of this, many of his disciples, when they had heard this, said, 'This is an offensive message. Who can accept it?' Now, if you look down to verse 63, he says, 'It is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless.'" Now, this is a key verse right here. "The commandments that I speak to you, they are spirit and they are life everlasting. The commandments that I speak to you, said the one sent in his day, they are life, and they are spirit, and they are life everlasting. Now, notice what he didn't say, and I don't want to be misunderstood, and I'll explain in a minute. He didn't say that the Torah is life here. Again, I don't want to be misunderstood because I don't at all want to even imply that Yeshua didn't speak every word that was written in the Torah. He didn't speak against it at all, but notice that he's telling you the channel through which the law must come. The commandments that I speak to you, they are spirit and they are life everlasting. And at this, in verse 66, many of his disciples turned away and no longer walked with him. This is 3 verses down from there. Now, his apostles recognized what I just said and what Yeshua said, of course. In verse 68, Yeshua, just above that, said, "Will you also leave me?" And Simon Kepha answered him and said, "Teacher, to whom would we go? You have the words of eternal life. And we believe, Pastor just gave a sermon by that title, and are sure that you are the Messiah, the Son of the living Father." At this, many of his disciples turned away. And again, you can read again in verse 60, because of this, many of his disciples, when they had heard this, said, "This is an offensive message." For some reason, people seem to have trouble accepting things from a man. Yeshua was a man, but they do have trouble accepting it. It's not so much that probably that he's a man, but that they have trouble accepting instruction from anyone who's physically present is really what it boils down to, because the one who's physically present can correct them. If anyone can say they want to follow Yeshua, but Yeshua isn't going to be here right at this present time to tell you that you shouldn't be committing this sin. At this point in time, that's pastor's job. He's going to tell you that, or the priests are going to tell you that. And this is why people can many times have problems accepting authority from men, because they're actually physically present and they'll actually tell you what you're doing wrong. And this is why they want to go to Yeshua, because Yeshua's not very nearby to tell them, you're sinning here. You shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that. You should be doing this and you should be doing that. Turn over to Leviticus 18, verse 1. Leviticus 18, verse 1. The statutes, the ordinances, and the judgments. I often wondered what those were. A pastor explained that recently. Mankind has had the law of Yahweh for a long time. It's been written down for a long time. He's had it. I believe that if you go into any hotel room, you can open the night table drawer, which is right next to the very bed that the people are sinning in, and you can open the drawer and you can open it up, and there's the law that says don't do what it is you're doing. But without the words of the one sent to explain all of the statutes, the ordinances, and the judgments, without the one sent to say, here's how you stop doing that, without the one sent to say, to send counselors, to teach, to guide, to give personal attention to and personal advice and instruction and guidance in your particular situation, there is no life. I think the 6,000-year history of mankind has proven that. You take away the priest, you take away the mouth of the teacher that explains the law, and everything turns to rubbish very quickly. No one notices when the priest is taken away, as the scriptures say, and as Pastor has said many times, but they sure start to notice. The world is starting to notice now what a mess things become when the teacher of righteousness is taken away. Well, soon they're going to start to notice how great it becomes when the teacher of righteousness comes to prominence. It's not going to be too much longer. Leviticus 18, verse 1. And Yahweh, we've been hearing this a lot lately, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe saying, this is Yahweh giving Moshe an instruction. He's telling them to speak to the children of Israel and say to them, say this to them. I am Yahweh your Father. Now, you've heard Pastor come up here and say, I am Yahweh to you, right? Well, back in Moshe's day, Moshe was instructed to say to the congregation, I am Yahweh your Father. And out of Moshe's mouth, that was the mouth that Yahweh used to teach righteousness at that time. And really, the mouth of the one sent is where life is imparted to life, or light rather, where life is imparted to light, the light being the law, the life being the explanation of it, the instruction of it, this is the way you should go walk in it. Otherwise, it has no effect. It's weakened. What do men do when they get the law but interpret it? Don't they? When you have only the law and no one sent to explain it, what do you get? Many people get a needle on the back of their hand, walking around and then flipping it to the other hand and then walking some more. This is what they do with it. This is how they pervert it. And they even pervert their own law. They even start changing their own laws when they get in their way, when they get in their way of making money. Turn over to Proverbs 26:11. Proverbs 26:11. This is one of the other choices on the menu, if you so choose. Proverbs 26:11. Here we see this written: like a dog returning to his vomit is a fool returning to his folly. Now, last week, and even a couple weeks before that, Pastor explained to us and told us what a dog was, and you can look this word up for yourself. It's basically a sodomite, or even a male prostitute, if you want to look up the word. And here, out of this dog's mouth, is coming something pictured as vomit. I don't mean to be gross, but then again, this is what's written for us, and this is how it's written. To be gross. It's actually meant to be gross, if you can read this. If you want to see a dog vomit, it's real easy. You simply take your remote control and you sit in your easy chair and you do this. Yeah, has everyone ever done that? And you can see a dog vomit. You can see it come out of your TV screen, all over your living room floor, all over yourself, all over your children, and you can just wallow in it if you want to. Or if you're driving in the car, you can reach over and turn the knob, and your whole car will fill up with it. Now, I speak this, maybe you can think of this the next time if you're ever tempted to do that. We can't partake in the table of Yahweh and the table of demons. When you turn on that knob, you are receiving dog vomit into your life. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think there's anyone even in the world that would argue this. The entire entertainment industry is run by sodomites. I really don't think anyone even in the world would disagree with that. I think they all know that. I think it's well known. It is run by these people. And you can tell by the teachings that come forth. This, begging your pardon, puking of God worship, which is what this is referring to. Maybe this will help if you ever find yourself tempted to do that, turn on the television set. Now, in a few minutes, I'm hoping Pastor will come out, and many times when he comes out, he'll of course praise Yahweh, and he'll ask you to be seated, and he will say, "May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you." And he'll typically read some news articles to show us what's going on in the world and show us that prophecy is being fulfilled. And then he'll utter those now familiar words, "And in the presence of our enemies, Yahweh prepares a table for his people." I don't know about you. I don't know if I'm the only one who notices this. I don't think so. But there's something in Pastor's voice when he reads the Sabbath menu. It's not, you know what I mean? It kind of reminds me of the Song of Songs or something. There's a little extra affection and no other priest can get it right, of course. But there's something extra there that's I mean, it makes me wonder if he's just talking about a roast beef sandwich here or something. Don't we all know how to make a roast beef sandwich? Don't you just get in your car and drive to your local super corporate grocery store and then buy yourself a loaf of sliced white wondrous bread? You know, the stuff that's so white it glows in the dark practically. And then you go over to the mustard or the mayonnaise aisle, whichever you prefer, and then you buy the mayonnaise, which is made from eggs that are hatched from chickens that have no rooster, and they're so pumped up with penicillin that it's sure to cure what ails you. And then, of course, let's not forget the deli department where you get these hermetically sealed plastic packages of sliced roast beef. You know, the stuff that was on the cutting room floor, and they scraped it all up, and they put the pork blood in it to glue it back together, and then they sliced it up, and if you're blessed, they irradiated it. So you don't even have to refrigerate it, and then you just go home and you slap it on a sandwich, and you eat it, right? Isn't that how you make a roast beef sandwich? No? What? You're all looking at me like I have two heads here. I mean, you mean Yahweh has a better way? What is this affection in Pastor's voice when he tells us what's on the menu for the Sabbath day? Well, it's the woman who traveled for thousands of miles to make food for us. It's the butcher who sees to it that our meats are kosher. It's the cafeteria worker who works long hours willingly to make your meals. It's the unselfish attitude. It's the lighting of the lamps and the blowing of the trumpets. It's the salted sacrifice. It's the correction given and the instructions followed. It's the spices fixed just so. It's the man who works through the night to fix your pipes so you'll have water in the morning. It's the labor of love performed by any worker in Yahweh's house with no expectation of gain whatsoever except the gain to one's character that is gotten by the diligent effort in keeping Yahweh's laws as taught by his one sent, all wrapped up, set on a plate, laid on a table prepared by Yahweh in the presence of our enemies by holy hands on Yahweh's holy Sabbath day. So, what's on the menu for the Sabbath day? How about peace, joy, and abundant living? How about babies born without defect, healthy and strong, eating healthy, clean food grown in healthy, clean soil, eating fruit from clean, healthy trees? All of this plowed with swords beaten into plowshares. What's on the menu for the Sabbath day is a young child who's ready, willing, and able to get up here behind this lectern in front of large crowds of people and declare, Shalom, my name is so-and-so, and I want to serve you forever. I want to serve you forever as a priest or as a priestess starting very soon. What's on the menu for the Sabbath day are parents, teachers, and schools that are able to produce such a child. Really, what's on the menu for the Sabbath day is everything you could possibly ever want in life, but could never obtain under this present beastly system. Now, speaking, I wanted to talk about, because it's really important that we do understand that really the laws of Yahweh do come from the mouth. They're written, they really have to be written and spoken. But it is important that you know how to speak. The man who learns to bridle his tongue, it is said, is the perfect man, has become the perfect man. I don't know that that word bridle necessarily only means like you might pull back on the bridle of a horse and say, whoa, Nelly, as if you were to hit your thumb with a hammer and here comes this stream of expletives, but you just stopped yourself and didn't say it. Or maybe you're working on a car engine and you slip with that wrench and your knuckles crack into the engine block. And it never helps when the engine block's about 300 degrees. But it's more than just stopping something from coming out of your mouth that shouldn't come out. It's also learning how to skillfully operate your mouth, learning how to teach the words of Yahweh, even in front of large crowds of people. And it's really not easy to do that. But we see that it can be done, and it can be done even by the very young. It has to be done because it's really a law, as in Yahweh speaking to us and telling us, you shall speak of them when you rise up and when you lie down. You shall talk about them in the way. You shall talk about them when you sit down to eat and so forth. You shall talk about them on the Sabbath day. And I encourage everyone, because of this necessity of learning how to speak and being able to speak, being clear in speaking and so forth, it's absolutely necessary that you attend these workshops. But more so than just attending, you need to participate. Because it is the participation, the standing up and speaking even though your knees are knocking, and just doing it anyway, that'll gain you the ability to speak in front of larger and larger crowds without falling over. Because it is a skill that's learned, and it's a skill that is gained from practice. And it does take some time. I remember my first speech class, and it wasn't easy to get up in front of just those few people. So I encourage everyone to learn how to do that, to learn how to speak, because, again, I'm going to send you back to Yachanan 6, verse 63. Because this is, at some point we are going to be sent out, and we are going to represent the kingdom of Yahweh, and we're going to have to teach these laws. We're going to have to explain them. We're going to have to set counselors in order and so forth in order to bring the people to perfection. And all that comes by bridling the tongue, as it were. It is the Spirit that gives life, the flesh is useless. The commandments that I speak to you, they are spirit, and they are life everlasting. And hopefully we won't have anyone falling away when we say that, because it occurred in Yeshua's day, and it occurs in Pastor's day, it occurred in Moshe's day, it occurs every time someone speaks the truth. I think Pastor once said that Yeshua was known to historians as a comedian. He had a sense of humor. And all comedians know that great comedy is based on truth. And we all know Yeshua had a lot of truth, so he must have been real funny, at least to those that loved him. To those that hate him, to those that hate any truth, then truth is not particularly funny. But to those who love truth, maybe he had his disciples rolling all the time, I don't know, but those that didn't fall away. With that, I do want to encourage you to continue in your studies and to continue learning how to speak, participating in the classes, especially the ones that require you to get up and speak in front of people, because that's really the way that you actually can get to a point where you're somewhat comfortable speaking in front of people. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to fail when the time comes for you to do that. With that, if everyone would please stand. It is now my great honor to present to you the greatest teacher in the world, Yisrayl Abel Hawkins. Praise God.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. Don't miss this meal today. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The meal is a oaky beef stir fry. There's nothing like it in the world. I guarantee you that. You're going to love this one. With the fried rice, and the stir-fried veggies, and the sweet English peas. Great combination here. today that Yahweh has blessed us with at His house. Go to His house and eat and rejoice, Yahweh says. I think with everything taking place, I don't know if you heard, but they're expecting the temperatures to be in the 120s before the summer is out. I asked for 126. We can do it. We can get through it. Set your mind to rejoice through all of this. It's very needful to get to usher in Yahweh's kingdom, everything that's taking place. But 120s. Now, if you cut your air conditioners off, you can live without them. I lived without them before I came here, and I'm living without them now. You can do it. But also, I'd like to ask you to start conserving water because of the long time drought that we're facing, and we've already had some wells go down. But if you remember what I told you about how people used to bathe for 6,000 years, and before electricity was invented, just before the 1900s, electricity was invented, and then of course everything was running water after that, and we had the services come into our house. Well, we didn't have them for several years after I was born, and of course didn't have bathrooms in the houses either. This seems like it's been here forever, but it hasn't. But you can live without those things. You can take 2 cups of water, one in one pan and another in the other pan, and a soap and a rag, and you can bathe in 2 cups of water. They did it for years. If you had to carry it in a bucket, you would you would conserve that bucket of water, especially if you had to carry it for about 100 yards. But pretend you do. They still have dishwashing basins for sale. You need 2 of them for washing dishes, one to rinse them, one to wash them in. It can be done. You can save a bundle on money. Cut your hot water heaters off. They're really not needed. Even if you go ahead and bathe in cold water, it'll cool you down and for a little while anyway. But that will save you a bundle of money too. You'd be surprised the gas you're wasting that's going through that hot water heater. Very inefficient too. And you really need to start practicing right now. Practicing to save money. The drought, they say, is going to be spreading. It was on the farm reports. They had a special on it. We'll try to bring you some on that news if you don't watch the news. But they are expecting a long drought now. They finally alerted to it. Of course, you still see people watering their lawns, which is a big waste, I think. Somebody told me that they was driving down the road the other day. This was a kind of a rich man. He's a guy that I do business with, but he said he saw this man out in the front yard eating grass, and so he told his chauffeur to turn around and go back, and he asked the guy, said, "Why are you eating grass?" And he said, "I don't have any food." And he said, "Well, get in the car. Get in my car. I'll take you and feed you." And he said, "Well, I got my family here too." "Well, where are they?" "They're out in the backyard. The grass is more plentiful back there." So he said, "Well, get them all. Get them all in my limousine." So there's driving down the road then. This guy said he was so thankful, that this guy was going to take his family and feed it. And he said, "Well, actually," he said, my grass is greener in my backyard anyway, and it needs mowing. So, well, that shows the love too, you know. Today's love, sort of. The ranchers are selling their cattle. They look like skin and bones on television. I guess they've waited too long. They don't have the money to feed them. They're losing their farms and ranches. Many of them are. Someone told me they were amazed at the amount of foreclosures and sales, you know, sheriff sales on houses and land now. So, you know, it's beginning to hurt everyone. They're losing their farms, they're losing their cattle, they're losing their livelihoods. Many people started committing suicide back in the 30s because of this. Unemployment now has reached Abelin, they say. They said they thought we'd get through this. Well, the blessings came to Abelin because I came to Abelin. When I came to Abelin in '67, there was rows and rows of empty houses. There was nothing here. It's like a pile of rocks, you know, and nobody wanted it. And Yahweh started blessing Abelin the year that He brought me here. And of course, I went into the rent business, and I couldn't put in rent trailers fast enough or rent houses. But the blessings are going to be withdrawn. And people are going to see where these blessings came from at last. Yeah. You know, when they said, when they told Yeremiah, you know, that Satan, the queen of heaven, that they worshipped her because she gave them all the money they wanted, and they never lacked for anything. That's in Jeremiah 44. Remember that now. Jeremiah 44, you see the Queen of Heaven worshipped. There was a lot of sightings back then, a lot of pictures taken. You know, I told you about the Polaroid camera that they tied to the donkey's tail or the camel's tail. Well, there is actually no pictures of Mary, but they got one they say it's her. Someone dreamed up. Might be like the Mona Lisa, you know, the man's head put on a woman's body. You know, it could be most anything. In an artist's mind, he can come up with anything. And with today's television, they might even get one in the clouds or sky or wherever. I'm not saying she doesn't appear. You know, this woman is full of tricks. Asked her sometime, well, what do you want me to do? Keep the commandments? If she ever appears to you, what do you want me to do? Keep the commandments of Yahweh? Asked her that question. Asked her if she keeps the commandments of Yahweh. Anyway, the things that are taking place right now, Yahweh says that they didn't even know it was Him that blessed them. That these blessings all came from Yahweh, and they didn't have sense enough to know it. They thought it was because Satan herself was blessing the people for worshiping her. She has no power to give you blessings. She can't do anything on her own. She could cause trouble. She can make deceptions, and she can influence other people, as we see in the Holy Scriptures. But she won't bless you. She curses you. Her job is to curse you and to take you down. In fact, she wants to destroy the whole United States. One more thing before we get into the sermon. Due to the storms and the trying to get roofs back over everyone's head and fences back up and all the damage that was done, we spent a lot of money. And of course, we need help. It's hard to keep up with these bills. If you bought a 2x4 lately, you know what I mean, or a piece of metal, you know that it's very expensive to do these repairs. And we do have almost all the people back dry again, in more ways than one. But at the same time, we've had a lot of cars break down, automobiles and tractors and equipment and stuff like that we need. And of course, we've started selling some of the scraps that we have. That helps some, but it's not bringing in near what we've had to spend because of this. And we do need your help if you can. Don't hurt yourself in doing so, but if you can, we could use it. The sightings of Mary. I think Mary is very desperate right now. When they speak of Mary, they want you to believe that it's Yeshua's mother, Miriam, who was a very righteous woman, raised in the hills of Galilee, brought up on the laws, the commandments of Yahweh, followed those laws strictly, married a very righteous man, and gave birth to Yeshua. And of course, she taught him and raised him, her and his dad, taught him the laws of Yahweh from day one, strictly as was told to us all in Deuteronomy 6 and verse 7. Chapter 6 and verse 7. The laws, statutes, and judgments of Yahweh that teaches love for Yahweh, the number one law in your holy scriptures. Love for Yahweh. You don't see love for Yahweh in the world today. You even mention the name out in public, and right away the hatred is shown in the people's eyes. If you let them know you follow the laws, you'll see more hatred, and they don't want you around them after that. But that's, in fact, if you don't know it, I am the most hated man on the face of the earth because I teach Yahweh's laws. And they proved that in their own court system here in Abelin. I'm not trying to punish Abelin. I literally love Abelin. It reminds me of Abel and the fight he went through. Also, Jerusalem and the fight that our Savior and the apostles went through. And I would like to see Abelin repent and turn to Yahweh totally. But she wants her desire, Satan's desire. If you be turning over to Isaiah 14, Satan's desire is to destroy mankind. And these appearances that she's making here right now, it's to encourage them in what they're doing, encourage them in sin. There's nothing lawful or nothing righteous, no righteousness coming forth from the religions of this world today. They have done away with the laws of Yahweh. All the religions have. There's very few of the laws that they even try to follow anymore. The only ones keeping Yahweh's Sabbath days, Sabbath appointments with Yahweh is the House of Yahweh. There's no one else, no other religions. But she thinks it's her job, she's made it her goal to try to destroy Yahweh's creation. Yahweh had a plan. His plan was to make mankind in His image and choose from those millions, billions, trillions of people the ones who would allow Him to make them in His image and then give them eternal positions in His kingdom as families, becoming members of the Yahweh family, all known as the House of Yahweh, and of course reproducing and taking over the vast universe that is out there for the taking, for training and for living, of course. making them livable again, the old waste places. That's why Yahweh created mankind. Satan became very jealous of mankind when she saw through Abel that he was going to make it, that he was going to be one of them in Yahweh's kingdom, and actually overcame sin and refused to participate in it. And of course, she set her goal to destroy mankind. And we see this in Isaiah, the 14th chapter here. These appearances that she's got going now is just to add more deception to what we already see in the world today. When the world was created, and when Yahweh set the two trees, the two religions, when He allowed those two religions to take place, that one tree that was a mixture of righteousness and evil, it branched out and it became a multitude of religions that we see throughout the world. Egypt was the place that it was displayed most, because they worshipped every known god in Egypt. And of course, they didn't have the name Yahweh there because He wasn't a god, never claimed to be a god. But they had all the known gods listed, and they couldn't find in the books the name of Yahweh. When Moshe said that Yahweh was the one that sent him, they couldn't find His name. Didn't know Him. Well, the world doesn't know Him today. In fact, He took His name away from Israel, even the 12 tribes of Israel. But this multitude of religions has also deceived the world. Each one of them has a tactic. One of them is, signs and wonders, which is now started again as prophecy said it would, as we will see in just a little while. But the signs and wonders are going to increase. And each time it does, people, they think, well, this is, it's appearing unto me because I'm so good and holy, and God just can't do without me. And this is what's going on in their mind, that God is going to bless me now. And one man said he stopped being a drug dealer and went to the Catholic Church, which was a step down, I thought, and became a priest in the Catholic Church. Well, what does he teach? He teaches the same deception, the same unbelief in what the prophets have spoken. He teaches unrighteousness. Before that, he was just giving them something to rejoice with because their minds was already gone. Well, here in Isaiah now, 14, and if you start there with verse 12, he says, "How are you fallen? How have you fallen from heaven, O Hallel, Lucifer, Venus, child of the light? How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations." Now, if you get that, she's prophesied right here to take the nations down, weaken them. There is so much power, could be so much power given to those who serve Yahweh. Yeshua stands as an example of that right now, sitting at the right hand of Yahweh. And this is what he's talking about, the weakness that is, she's weakening the nations, the people, weakening their minds. Some of it is brought about by eating unclean foods. I hate to say it, but I know that some are still eating in these unclean restaurants, and it's a no-no. You really need to come out from among them and be separate. Fix your own foods. That's the thing you can do. There's no excuse in not. If need be, rough it like I did when I was a child. You get used to it. It's bad. It's hard sometimes to go to bed hungry. Take you a glass of water, and you'll readily see that it quickly gets rid of the hunger if you get your mind off of it. But that's part of the peaceful solution character education. And if you put it to use in your life, you can control your body. But the weakening of the nation starts with confusion of the mind from eating unclean animals and taking in these unclean parasites. The things of the world, especially in Abelin, if they know who you are, they will go to the restroom and they'll doctor up your food. Now, we know this for a fact. We know they do this to other people besides us, like if they don't like a policeman or something like this, they do these things. Now, this is the confusion that you see. This is the hatred. The love is cold, as Yeshua said in Matthew 24, about verse 12. Their love, they have no love. They have a hatred, a confused mind of bitterness to where they don't know what to do. We were shown some of the results of the army boys that had been sent to Afghanistan and Iraq, and they come back. There's about 75,000 of them now. They're homeless. They can't get a job. They have their training was to fight. So they've gone through this trauma. They stand around. Now, this is the obvious ones. What you're dealing with in the cafeterias, the unclean world, you're dealing with uncleanness from women that it's a everyday thing in cafeterias because women work there. But then the men are also unclean. But when they want to make your food unclean, they can do it quickly and without you even knowing it. They can mix it in your beans or with your meat or whatever, and you never know you ate it. Now, this is what you're facing when you go out there and somebody finds out this is where you're from. Automatically, they hate us without a cause. They hate you without a cause if they find out you're a member of the House of Yahweh. Think it strange. Don't think it's strange if the world hates you. Well, Satan, of course, hates mankind. And she has weakened the nation. She is bringing their strength down to where they can't think clearly. They have no love, not even for one another. In verse 13, he says, "For you have said in your heart, I will ascend above the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars." These stars, see if I can find the article here, the correct translation of this. And I won't read you all of this because David's going to bring, Yehuda's going to bring a sermon on it, probably during the feast. Let's see. 4, 14, 13. Here we go, maybe. This word here, stars, we find it again. Let's turn there and read that first before we read this other. Revelations 12, because here's where we see it. Hold your place. We'll be coming back here to Isaiah. I'd never noticed this before till last night, and I had David and I were working late last night. I think he went all night, but I quit after a while. But anyway, I noticed that the word here in 14:13 was feminine. So we decided, I said, well, let's look this up in Revelations and see if this is too. because it shows here in Revelations 12, Revelations 12 and verse 4, he says, "And her tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven, and cast them." Now we know that word cast means assigned. So these people joined her, these beings joined her, and they were assigned duties on earth. That's what the word cast there means. I don't know why they could put it cast, but she merely appointed them in positions on earth, to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to be delivered in order to devour, that is, to destroy her son as soon as he was born. Well, if she could have done this, of course, she could have destroyed the work of Yahweh, and of course the means of reconciling mankind to Yahweh. Let me see if I can find that Revelations 4. Verse 3, as corrected, "And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns." These are shown in Daniel and also Revelation 17. "And crowns, and 7 crowns upon her heads, and her going to and fro to cause transgression of Yahweh's law, dragged out the third part of the holy sisters, the holy sister Malachim of Yahweh." Now, the authoritative books is what they say this word actually means. The holy sisters Malachim of Yahweh. These are those who did not hold fast, and she, the dragon, did cause them to fall away, to not keep Yahweh's laws. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to be delivered in order to devour her son as soon as he was born. So there's these were female messengers of Yahweh, at one time holy, but left their holy estate, as one of the apostles said, left their holy estate, and of course they're confined to the position that she has given them on earth at this time, as one of the apostles wrote. But and the dragon was cast out. Well, that's going into another scripture, but remember that, and then go back to Isaiah here, Isaiah 14, and she pulled these away, made them fall away with her teaching of power. You know, you can build you a church over here, and you can have people flocking to you. You can build you a church down here this way and have people flocking to you, and you won't have to do what the priest of the house of Yahweh tells you. We'll raise ourselves above the priest. That's what you're reading right here. Read it again. Notice verse 13. This was her teaching to Eve, in fact, and caused her to take on the same character, the same hateful character that Satan herself has. "For you have said in your heart, I will ascend above the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of Yahweh." And she had a third part. Now, if you could imagine the vast network of what we know of the heavens, you could imagine then the trillions of beings that have followed her, female beings, that have become whatever, and easily convince them, seems like, to follow her in this rebellion towards Yahweh, I will sit in the highest place myself. I won't have to sit under a priest. I won't have to be instructed by a priest, is what she's saying. On the holy mountain, this mountain, the uplifted promotion of Yahweh, of the congregation, of the congregation of Yahweh, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High, yet you will be brought down, or you will bring yourself down to Sheol, as this should have been written, the grave, to the sides of the pit. She's actually destroying her own self in taking away, putting hatred in place of love, is one of the things that we know for sure brings down the body. Putting hatred in your mind, this is one of the things they say that is destroying the minds of the soldier, because they teach them hatred for the enemy. They've got to teach hatred for the enemy in order for this person to kill. I've told you this was a trick of the Catholic Church, and Malachi Martin told about this himself. But history shows the crusades that took place, the popes would say, stop fighting among yourselves, join me in this fight against these people here, and we'll take their lands, you'll be wealthy, so the promise of riches. You can rise above these people, take everything they got for yourself, and you can build you an empire. This is all put in their minds, the same as it was in Yeshua's mind when she showed him all the kingdoms of the earth and said, this is yours if you will work with me, serve me. And of course, Yeshua turned it down. He was prepared in advance by Miriam and Yosef, who the mother and dad from day after day after day diligently, so he was able to resist this. These are the kind of children we'll be bringing forth very soon in the kingdom itself. Praise Yahweh. That's the breeding program that Yahweh has in His plan for the house of Yahweh and all of those who have made it before us. At the end, we will totally replace all of those who kill themselves off. We will replace them with beings who will never go to war. Praise Yahweh. Never lift up sword against again, as is said in Isaiah 2:2 or 2:7, I believe it is. The boys that we see coming back, if you'll keep this in mind, if you notice them, they'll show pictures of them on the street now. They're homeless. They have no jobs. They can't get a job. They're wandering around like they're lost. They're looking at people when they go by, and they'll turn their head and follow them as they go by. Their minds are gone. One of the deteriorations of that mind is to put extreme hatred in that mind. It destroys certain cells of the mind. So this is one of the ways of weakening the nations, putting hatred there. The popes used to say, Malachi Martin said, but also the history of the Crusades said, they would put propaganda out against a certain group that was keeping Yahweh's laws. These Galileans, when they started persecuting them, now this occurred way back even before the Apostle Shaul, but he showed how extreme it was when he told about his own life doing the will of the priest, the Pharisees and Sadducees and Essenes, where he would get letters to kill. Authority, a license to murder, a license to kill. And he would hunt these people down. They would form a colony someplace to where they thought they were safe. And there they would practice the laws of Yahweh. Well, of course, the Catholic Church had to contend with these people because they were teaching the prophecies and the laws. The Pharisees, who became Catholics, they didn't want those laws anymore. They didn't want them in their lives at all. So they tried to get rid of that, wipe out that past history when they once were forced. They were forced living in the kingdom of Samuel. And Yahweh said, this is the way they were, Samuel, when I brought them out of Egypt. They haven't changed. They just pretended they changed for a while. And of course, they hated Samuel. They hated and rejected Yahweh through Samuel. Well, of course, the Catholic Church, they finally got rid of all of these laws and said, you've got to do what the rabbis tell you. That was the Pharisees. And then later, the popes, as they became the supreme power in place of God, when they said this law is changed to the first day of the week, it became a death penalty to worship on the seventh day instead of the first day. When they said don't use the name anymore, it was a death penalty, like they said to Jeremiah the prophet. Don't speak and don't prophesy to us in that name or we will kill you. So it was a death penalty. Well, of course, when the apostle Shaul, before he became converted, he was doing just that. He was a Roman soldier and he went out with a license to kill given unto him by the priest, the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes. He was a servant of Satan, the devil. He wasn't a servant of Yahweh until he was converted. Yet you will, now, if you're thinking about the apparitions, if you're thinking that Yahshua appeared unto a Satan worshiper and converted him, and that was another work, no, it wasn't. Yahshua's work was prophesied. That was one of the questions that was brought up, and I want to get it out of your mind because there's only 7 works of Yahweh prophesied. Yahshua and his apostles were part of that 7 works. Yahshua, yes, he has the power to appear to anyone and say anything he wants to that person. And his work is, as it was with the Samaritan woman, to plant something in his mind or her mind. Satan also has that power, that authority. She can't force it, but she can deceive by planting things in your mind. Just like Yahshua did with the apostle Shaul. Both of them had the same power, the same authority. He wasn't breaking any laws by going to one of Satan's servants. Satan wasn't breaking any laws by approaching Eve. Her laws that she broke was, he taught Eve to sin, to be like her in character. Well, yet you will be brought down to Sheol, the grave. That is, you'll bring yourself down to the sides of the pit. Those who see you will stare at you, and they will talk about you. Is this the one, the adversary, who shook the earth, made kingdoms to tremble? Is this the one who made the world like a wilderness? Well, of course, that's the prophecy that's very close to come. They're saying now the ex-CIA agent and his crew, no longer with the CIA, but was with them for years. I don't have the article with me, but they're saying now that they suspect that the big wars are going to start in September of this year. I'm thinking you better start overcoming the little things, do some fasting, praying, humble yourselves and see what a blessing it is to be told what to do, that Yahweh has actually went to the trouble to bring forth a house that can tell you what to do, to stay in contact with Him. One of the main things, of course, is keeping your Sabbath appointment in Yahweh's house with Yahweh. Don't let a root of bitterness spring up, coming straight from Satan's inspiration, and turn you away from Yahweh's house and cause you to miss your appointments. You miss an appointment, you miss a lesson, food from Yahweh. Is this the one who made the world like a wilderness? So that's what she's going to do. That's her plan. Who overthrew cities in it, and who would not let her captives go free? Look on down to verse 21. Prepare slaughter for her children because of the iniquities of the fathers. Well, of course, in Isaiah 24, you see this. You see the slaughter. You also see the iniquities. That's changing Yahweh's laws. Well, what does the laws say? Will Satan and her, this queen, she calls herself the Queen of Heaven, calls herself Mary, and looks so family-like, I'm told. I haven't seen her picture yet. I doubt rather seriously if that is her picture. The way I've got her pictured is that her mother never did educate her in the way of dressing or combing her hair even. But maybe she looks different than the whores of Hollywood. I don't know. But I don't think she does. Anyway, when she makes her appearance, asked her if she ever does, do you keep these laws? Do you teach the laws of Yahweh? Do you teach righteousness? Ask her some questions. See if she will answer you. Because of the iniquities of the fathers, shown in Isaiah 24, 1 through 6, they rejected Yahweh's laws. They changed these laws, broke the ordinance, and the everlasting covenant. The everlasting covenant is, I will meet with you every seventh day, and on the on the yearly Sabbaths, I will meet with you and eat with you. I will join you, and I will teach you throughout all eternity. That was one of the covenants, the first covenant. Keep the Sabbath day, the seventh day. That's the first one mentioned. That's where it all starts. Coming to meet with Yahweh and get your meal of spiritual food. Prepare slaughter so that they will not rise and possess the earth and fill the face of the world with cities. Look on down to verse 24. Yahweh has vowed, saying, just as surely as I have planned, so will it come to pass. If you can imagine this taking place, this plan, maybe billions of years before it ever took place, and Yahweh's great mind calculating all of this out and knowing even what Satan is going to do in this spot right here at this time, knowing it, but allowing it to take place and letting it be part of his plan. So will it come to pass. I have purpose, so will it stand. Look at verse 26. This is the purpose, the plan. That is purpose. Now that remember the plan. In the beginning was the plan. Yachanan 1:1. And nothing was done that Yahweh did not allow, as Yachanan says. But this is the purpose, the plan, that is purposed upon the whole earth. Upon the whole earth, notice, this is the hand that is stretched out upon all the nations. What is taking place here? You made the world a wilderness. That is going to take place very soon. The burning, the nuclear bombs. We have the nuclear bombs. That was part of the same prophecy. We have them. twice now I've heard Barack Obama mention, yesterday evening on the world news, he mentioned it again in saying we've got to get this mess straightened out if we're going to avoid Armageddon. Now, he said that yesterday evening. Before that, he said this could turn into, if we don't get this settled. Now, do they plan to settle it? Does the quartet actually plan to settle this, or do they plan to allow it to proceed and cause what they call Armageddon? Of course, they don't understand what Armageddon is, but it's mass destruction as far as they know, and that's what they're talking about. But he mentioned, he said, if we don't get this straightened out, it can turn into mass destruction. So that's twice that he's mentioned this. From Revelations 6, we see that the quartet is given this power. We know that the power comes from Satan. We know that her purpose, her plan, is to destroy the earth and the heavens that involve the earth. And we'll get into that just a little bit here, but Yeshua mentioned this. But now he says in 29, do not rejoice, all of you of Philistia, because the rod of him who struck you has broken, for out of the serpent's root will come forth an adder, and his offspring, the offspring of this fiery serpent, will be a fiery flying serpent. Well, of course, here again it's speaking of the nuclear bomb that is going to take place, that flies and will be mass destruction, or what they're calling Armageddon. Look at verse 32. He says, what will you answer the messenger of the nation, or nations? Now, before this, the messenger, or after this, was when Isaiah actually gave you the messenger of the nation, which he knew, Yahweh knew, the messenger of the nation would be seeking the answers here in Isaiah, seeking the answers in the prophecies. So, of course, the answer, the messenger of the nation, is the two witnesses. Let them foretell them. Remember? Got that? What will you answer the messenger of the nation? So the answer he's saying here, he's asking Isaiah to put it down for us right here. That Yahweh has founded, and they translated that Zion, those who lift up holy hands. Yahweh has founded this. So we know that Yahweh has founded this. He has made this to live forever, not to be destroyed. Though Satan is wanting to destroy it here, as we can see from 13 to 17 verses, he says, the messenger then gives the answer, Yahweh has founded this. He has planned all of this. Nothing takes place without his permission. Don't think that this Satan that is appearing to the people in the form of a woman, don't think that she has power to destroy you or stop the foundation that Yahweh has set in motion. All of it is planned, as Isaiah shows here. This, if you hold your place there and turn over to 1 Timothy, 1 Timothy 3:15, found on page 934, you'll understand this, what he's saying here. That Yahweh has founded those who lift up holy hands. He's the one that brought this about. I will make mankind in my image after my likeness, and I will give him authority. That's his plan. So he's founded that plan. 1 Timothy 3:15. 1 Timothy 3:15. But if I am delayed, I write so that you know the right and proper way to conduct yourselves in the house of Yahweh, who are the called out ones. This is Zion. They could have translated this Zion. I don't know why they didn't. They are the called out ones of the living Father, the pillar and ground of the truth. Founded, ground. If you compare that, you can drop Timothy now to Maya and go and hold your place in Isaiah and go back to Psalms 119 and remember what Timaiah said, the pillar and ground of the truth. Yahweh laid the foundation. He started laying it with Abel. He actually started laying it when he planned it. That was his plan. He started carrying it out with Abel, or the creation of Adam and Eve. But in Psalms, if you want to make yourself a footnote there by the side of Isaiah 14:32, and put Psalms 119, 142, and remember what you just read in Timaiah, Psalms 119, 142, he says, your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, because your law is the truth. They're the pillar and ground of the truth, as Timaiah said. Remember that? Pillar and ground of the truth. Yahweh has founded this righteousness. Now look at you got your in Psalms 119. Now look at 151 also, verse 151. You are near, O Yahweh, and all your laws are truth. So he's founded this in the laws and in the prophecies. If you read that again now, that Yahweh, Isaiah 14:32, what will one then answer the messenger of the nations, who is studying to take this to all nations? The two witnesses. What will you answer them? That Yahweh has founded those who lift up holy hands to him. That's the reason you're here. That word founded, the word founded means to establish as an institution, often with provisions for future maintenance. And this is found in that Hebrew word founded. Okay? Now in Ephesians, you can drop your place there in Isaiah for the time being and go over to Ephesians, the 2nd chapter. That's found on page 917. Ephesians 2. Now we're just covering what Mary wants to do. The world don't know this, and when she appears, it just strengthens their faith of unbelief of doing away with Yahweh's laws. In Ephesians, remember that Yahweh founded this way now. He established it. He established the house of Yahweh. And look at Ephesians now, 2 and verse 19. Therefore now, you are no longer Gentiles. You're no longer heathen, is what that word should have been. But you could translate it Gentiles, strangers to the faith. Strangers to the faith. Now, if you know, I spent a year trying to explain that Gentiles is a false word, race is a false word. It's a lie. It's a lie. It was meant to deceive. But you're no longer strangers to this promise. Therefore, now you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the other saints and members of the house of Yahweh. members of the house of Yahweh. Verse 20, and are built upon the foundations, what Yahweh founded in Isaiah. This is what he answers to us. You're built upon this foundation that Yahweh laid of the apostles, the prophets, Yahshua himself being the chief cornerstone. I spent several sermons on that too, showing how this all came together that was prophesied, with Yahshua being the sinless one and becoming the chief cornerstone of the last days house, the house of Yahweh, with Yahshua as high priest. It's all come together. And this is the last day's work of the messengers that Isaiah knew of and was answering our questions in advance. In whom the whole house, being, this verse 21, being fitly joined together by Yahweh, grows into the holy house of Yahweh. Didn't start that way, but that's what it's growing to. The perfect people inside the house of Yahweh. In verse 22, and in him you are also being built together to become the house of Yahweh through the law, or is it translated spirit. Yochanan 6:63 says, these words, these laws are the spirit that changes the heart and mind, making you become the holy house of Yahweh. Now, the foundation, let's look back to Matithia now. I'll just got a couple more scriptures and then go back to Matithia 5. Matithia 5, because we're still on the what Satan's purpose is. The foundation stands unless, now he's founded it on these laws, statutes, and judgments. That's the foundation of it. Yahweh has founded it, and it's going to stand, as Yahshua says, unless, Matithia 5, and look at verse 17. Verse 17, do not even think that I've come to destroy the law or the prophets. I have not come to destroy them, but to establish them. Verse 18, and truly I say unto you, unless heaven and earth passes away, unless Satan can actually destroy earth and the heavens that govern the earth, that provide for the earth, one yod, the smallest one of the smallest of the letters, will in no wise pass from this law. The law says, go to Yahweh's priest. That's the start. That's the start of your education in training you to be like Yahweh. But Satan's hopes is the destruction of the earth and the heavens that govern the earth. She hopes to do this with the nuclear wars, as we see, as the Savior speaks of here in Matithia 24. She's in hopes of guiding mankind into this mass destruction. And if you notice verse 29 of Matithia 24, he shows the war is going to be in heaven also. We have a lot of equipment up there. I don't know what it all consists of, and everyone seems to have satellites, or a lot of the nations have satellites. Well, what are they doing with the satellites, and what do they intend to do with those satellites? He says immediately, verse 29, Matithia 24, immediately but after the tribulation of those days will the sun be darkened, and the moon will not give her light, and the stars will fall from heaven, because the powers of the heavens will be shaken. They'll be shaken, but not destroyed. Because Yahweh himself, this is his plan, and he is governing it, and will only allow it to go to a certain distance. Now back to Isaiah 14. Isaiah 14, Yahweh says in advance, he shows you in advance what Satan can do. What her hopes are of doing is like Isaiah 14 and verse 17, to make the world a wilderness, She wants to destroy the heavens and the earth to prevent the plan of Yahweh from ever taking place. And Yahweh allows her to bring this fiery flying serpent, the nuclear bombs, and try this. But he stops it at a certain point. His laws are founded, they are going to stand. And Yeshua said, unless heaven and earth pass away, that foundation is going to stand. Yahweh says through the prophets, and he says, Yeshua said, believe the prophets. This earth is going to stand. It's going to be almost totally destroyed, almost, but not quite. And you are the ones going to receive the power. That's what you're training for now, to be like Yahweh in His image and likeness. And you're the ones that's going to receive the power to actually start rebuilding the earth, take over the heavens eventually. This would probably take 1 billion years or so, but one day with Yahweh is as 1,000 years. Don't ask Him for a cent. Ask Him for the 1 cent. May Yahweh bless you, and I'll turn the services back to the next speaker. I love you.